Welcome to Behavioral Health Today, a podcast brought to you by the Triad Network. This podcast is designed to share trending topics occurring within the world and our communities and bring them a behavioral and mental health perspective.
Welcome to Behavioral Health Today. I'm your host, Sharlee Dixon, and today I'm joined by Judi Vitale. Judi is a renowned writer, speaker, and empowerment coach with over 30 years of experience helping individuals tap into their inner strengths and potential. Her horoscopes have been featured in major publications like Marie Claire, Redbook, 17.com, and Tarot.com. Certified by the NCGR Professional Astrologers Alliance, Judi blends astrology, mindfulness, and transpersonal coaching to empower people to live authentically and fully. Through her workshops, retreats, and private sessions, she helps others reduce stress, boost productivity, and deepen their connection to the divine spark within. We're thrilled to have Judi with us today to explore the transformative power of heart-centered hypnotherapy and how this unique approach addresses the mind-body connection, heals past trauma, and empowers both clients and therapists to rewrite limiting beliefs and foster deeper emotional healing. Welcome to the show, Judi. We're so excited to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Thanks. So as we get started, I'm always very curious on how our clinicians get into the type of work that they do. Can you talk to us about what first inspired you to pursue a career in hypnotherapy and counseling?
Yes, through a very strange path, which it usually is in life, I became a consulting astrologer and a widely published author and everything earlier in life. But when I would have a client and I would notice that they may have had trauma in their past, and I would pursue it, I wouldn't say, "Oh, I see you have trauma in your past." I would say, "Well, tell me about the relationship with your siblings." And if they went like, "Ugh," then I would know that it was time for me to refer them to someone who could help them with that. And very frequently they would say, "I've been in therapy and it hasn't helped me." And I had used hypnotherapy in my own healing and recovery, back when I was a younger person, and I knew how powerful it was. And so I began to say, gee, I wish I could do that, because my clients would say, "I don't want to go to a therapist, or I'm in therapy. I want you to help me." People build trust with you, especially when you've been with them for many years. And so I was looking around for quite some time and nothing really clicked. It was like, oh, well, that program is way out on the West Coast and I would have to be present there for it. And I'm on the East Coast and I was in New York City. And then I moved back here to Pittsburgh, where I grew up. I've been here for a few years now. And not too long after I moved back here, I got interested again. And I found the Wellness Institute, and that they had a 6-day program where I could learn how to do hypnotherapy in 6 days in Cleveland, which is only a 2-hour drive. So that's how I found the Wellness Institute. And I know that it was synchronicity and a blessing to me to have found such a great place to study hypnotherapy, because it isn't just, it is clinical, it's very highly clinical, very highly scientific in a way, and certainly psychologically sound, but it also encompasses the spiritual aspect of a person's being. And that's one of the highlights of the Wellness Institute's work, is that we do consider the entire individual and not just, what's going on in the head.
Got you. That is a unique combination. That astrology and counseling is one that I've not necessarily heard being put together before. So how did these fields influence your approach to hypnotherapy, and how would you say they complement each other?
Well, as an astrologer, I was, and I'm actually I went through certification for that, and we have to learn counseling skills anyway. So although, I tell people I'm not a licensed therapist, I'm a counselor in astrology, they overlap a lot. And, sometimes you're talking about, what planet is where and what's affecting you and how it shapes your personality. And sometimes you're just talking about life and how they can better navigate it. And so it was a very smooth transition in that way. But I was just delighted that when I did join the Wellness Institute's program, that there were components in it that made me feel very much at home, coming from that kind of esoteric background. People will come to me for both. they'll come for astrology and then hypnotherapy, or hypnotherapy and, oh, you do astrology too? Yes, so I often use them in combination, but usually in separate sessions. I wouldn't do them like in the same session necessarily.
Okay.
I wouldn't say, oh, you're an Aries, so this is how we're going to hypnotize you. No, that's not how that's going to work. But if I see someone's going through a certain phase of life, it informs me about what they're going through. And I can always soothe somebody through astrology by saying, it's a time period and it's going to pass. So it's always helpful for people. And that's what I love most about it. But, many times you're just talking about what's going on for them. And you get to get very close to people. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So can you explain to me or to our listeners as well, what exactly is heart-centered hypnotherapy and how does it differ from traditional hypnotherapy? So I've been hypnotized before, and I'm doing my air quotes because it was in one of those mass, this is how you lose weight. We're going to hypnotize you into not eating the stuff or, stop smoking cigarettes because we're going to, hypnotize you. What is the difference between what you do and that type of experience?
Well, there are two levels when we talk about working in the altered state. With hypnosis, we're doing exactly what you described. We put the person into a state of mind where the subconscious mind is allowed to emerge because the regular conscious mind is kind of just not put to sleep exactly, but quieted down. It's become quieter. And so then the subconscious can emerge and we can address it and have better communication between the subconscious and the conscious mind. And that is hypnosis. In hypnotherapy and in heart-centered hypnotherapy specifically, we do what we call age regression, meaning that we allow a person to understand something about a recent event and what emotion came up for them. And then for them to relax even more and go back in time and find out what the source of that emotion is. And in the course of this, we invite them to express the emotions using Gestalt techniques, such as yelling into a pillow, hitting down with something to let the heavy emotions out of the body, to cry, to use the emotions and really release them from the body, the mind, and the spirit. And as we do this, the person has a corrective emotional experience. For example, a child who was being abused by a teacher, a parent, even an older sibling may, not have said anything at the time, just kind of sat there and froze or just cried and screamed and, didn't really let out their emotions. Taking them back in this manner gives them the opportunity to re-experience. It isn't a remembering as much as a re-experience of the situation. And there they can express, how dare you do this to me? That isn't right. And then we then ask them, after they've expressed their emotions, to say, that situation back then when you were 6 or 7 years old, tell me what you made that mean about you. And they might say, I'm helpless, I'm stupid. Now, these subconscious messages that we have of that nature stay in there all through life. And so that happened at 6. Someone comes into their 50s or 60s and they still have that recording going on in their mind. So what we do after we finish with the age regression and we have them express the emotions and tell us what they made it mean about them and how it influenced the way they chose to behave, we then give them the opportunity to reframe that. I am smart. I am powerful. I don't hide. I show myself. I show my worthiness, or my ability. I demonstrate how powerful I am in positive ways. So we take what was a very negative situation and allow the person to see it in a more realistic sense. The 6-year-old child had no business being abused. But, when you're a 6-year-old child, you think I deserved it. I did something wrong. But then when you're, look at it in this new light, then you can come to a part where we heal. And then we have an actual healing portion of the session where we will allow people to have a conversation with that little child and tell them all the things that little child needed to hear, such as, you're beautiful, I love you just the way you are. And this possibly is the real heart-centered part of it, because although it's similar to parts therapy in that we're talking to a part of the personality, in fact, we're doing a little more than that. We're having compassion and love for that part. So that then the next time that someone triggers that response in me, someone says something that reminds me of that situation, I can say, oh, well, that was that situation. That's not current. This isn't the same situation. And calm down, little girl part of me. It's okay. You're fine. You're good. And the physiological things that go on in the brain are quite interesting as well. When we experience trauma, the amygdala part of our brain is setting off an alarm bell. Oh my gosh, this is terrible, this is horrible. Well, when we go into this situation, shock, which is when something is happening on the outside that just makes it really uncomfortable for us to be in our bodies, we check out. We might get very agitated or we might freeze. And we call this shock. And what happens is the experience never gets processed by going through the hippocampus and back up into the frontal lobe. It stays in just like it's always happening, and over and over and over. And this is where PTSD comes from, post-traumatic stress disorder. When a person, hears a firecracker go off and they remember, they come back to the moment of being in an explosion of some kind. It's just a firecracker, or maybe it's even just, something falling on a tile floor. But it sets them off because they associate it with that experience. So we are allowed then to bring that experience into the frontal lobe with a timestamp on it saying, it happened 20 years ago. It's not happening in the moment. I don't have to hold this anxiety, this fear. And we also have ways and tools that we give people to bring down emotions such as fear and shame. Shame is so huge, especially when people are abused. They feel shame. So we give them an opportunity to give the shame back to the person who really deserves it. And then we also teach them how to talk to that part of themselves and tell themselves, that's not your shame. You are good. You are wonderful. And so that's how we work with it. And then we finish off by, just asking the person, do you see how the issue that you came in with is connected to the areas where you went back in regression? And usually they'll speak about that. It is a very, very powerful modality. It can accelerate therapy by years. I mean, I've had people come out of their first or second session and say, I just did 10 years of therapy there.
Wow.
It's that powerful. It really, really is.
Wow.
So,
and just listening to you describe the process, it really seems like a lot of mind-body connection type of things playing out there. So so can you talk to us a little bit more about that, and even some examples of how the body can communicate messages to the mind and vice versa?
absolutely. Well, when we have a traumatic situation, oftentimes our psyche can't hold it for us, our body does. And so people will walk around with a chronic pain and go to several different doctors, and they'll say, we really can't see any organic cause for this. And we can then go to the body when the person is in the light trance state of that we use in hypnotherapy, and ask them to get in touch with that body part and give it a voice. What is it saying? Maybe it's saying I'm hurt. Maybe it's saying I'm mad. Maybe it's saying I'm scared. And then we work with that and bring back into an age regression. And oftentimes we are able to find out what the body is holding on to, what sort of a memory. I've had some astounding results with cases like that. And oftentimes people go back beyond their birth. They go back into the womb, they can go back to their birth moment, and they can even go into past lives. And, some people believe in past lives and some people don't. I always instruct the students, it doesn't matter whether you believe in them or not. If your client believes that they're in one, you have to know how to handle that.
Yeah.
And it can happen. It can definitely happen.
Wow.
So,
Wow. A few questions off of that one, just that one statement there. So a few minutes ago, you mentioned that it can speed up the process of therapy. So, so is hypnotherapy, or is that something that is a short-term type of thing? So if I come to you feeling a certain way about an issue, is that something that I can deal with in 1 or 2 sessions and never have to revisit it again? Is this something that we need to kind of tweak and play with later? Like, how does the longevity, what does that look like?
It varies.
Okay.
And, I will never say to a client, oh, well, we can make you feel completely better in 1, 2, or 10 sessions. I just say, let's see how things go. Ordinarily, a person comes into hypnotherapy because they want to do some depth work. Ideally, they do the depth work and then talk about it in therapy to integrate it. Okay, so that it isn't just like in isolation. And then they can talk about how it makes sense in the rest of their lives. And then they can have another hypnotherapy session. But, you always have to allow the client to see what they need. And you can't really promise, oh, yeah, I can fix that in 2 sessions or 3. No, it's like, let's see what happens. And I like to mix hypnotherapy sessions with coaching sessions. I operate as a transpersonal coach. And that's how I do it.
Awesome. Yes, because a lot of the like traditional hypnosis, like I mentioned, the group type things, it's a one-time thing and then you're fixed. So I was really curious about how that looks like doing it as a heart-centered hypnotherapy. Yeah, it is. And I mean, I'll be honest, it didn't work for me.
I'll tell you why it didn't work. With hypnosis, you need to repeat the suggestion to the person in the trance state a number of times. So what we do is to record the session, okay, where we place them into the trance state, and then we allow them to hear the suggestion. And you never say, I will stop smoking. We will say, the next time I smell cigarette smoke, it's going to be very repugnant to me. Okay, and then maybe we work with that for a while, and then we bring it down to the time where it's like, I now choose to be, free of smoking. We always keep it positive, not like I'm not going to do that. That doesn't work, but it must be repeated. So the client needs to take that home and listen to it over and over again. And something that's very powerful that I like to give my clients is self-hypnosis. This is where I train them how to put themselves into the trance, how to give themselves suggestions, and how to come out of the trance themselves. This is really good if somebody's afraid of what I'm going to do to them, if I'm going to make them cluck like a chicken or something,
Yeah.
So I let them do it for themselves, and they can see that it's completely safe for them to do. And then also for them to record it in their own voice. Oh, very powerful. Very, very powerful. Because if you hear yourself telling you these things, it's just a lot more than like, oh, well, she said I should do that. It's like, I said I should do that. And the communication is much more direct.
Absolutely. And it seems like it almost, you change your own self-speak or your own inner voice to be that level of positivity.
Yes. The level of inner knowing, knowing what's really good for me. It really isn't good for me to eat that whole cake. Like, I could have a nice small piece. I don't need to have the whole cake. Yeah.
Right. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
Whether you're a longtime or first-time listener to Behavioral Health Today, you're probably familiar with Triad, the company that brings you this podcast. But you may not know that Triad also hosts a community for current and aspiring behavioral and mental health professionals, featuring trending content and education and career resources, all for free. If you are a behavioral or mental health professional, or you're studying to become one, join more than 80,000 people on Triad by claiming your free professional account today. Visit us at hellotriad.com/BHT. That's hellotriad.com/BHT, and join the Triad community today.
You also mentioned that many of the therapists that you teach this practice to, they experience their own type of transformation through heart-centered hypnotherapy. So how does it specifically work for those in the healing profession to heal themselves?
Well, when Diane Zimbaroff and David Hartman put the Wellness Institute together, their mission was to heal the healers. So many people in the mental health profession and other healing professions go into that line of work because they have wounds of their own. And so if I take care of other people, I don't have to look at my own wounds. But Diane has often said that it's very scary for a therapist to do his or her own work. It's even scarier for a client to sit down in front of a therapist who has not done the work, because they're not going to be able to hold the space. You know, if I've been sexually abused and someone comes in and confides in me, even in a talk therapy session, that they've been sexually abused, or in a hypnotherapy session, if they regress to that, that's going to trigger me unless I've done the work and I've learned how to transfer that out of the panic situation into the remembering that it happened to me and I can help this person. Now I can hold the space for them.
Got you.
So
Got you.
it's an important aspect of it. And I don't think a lot of the people coming in, even though we do inform them of that, they don't expect to experience it for themselves. But when they do, they realize how wonderful it is. And it is important, in fact, imperative for a good therapist to, I mean, even when, you go through traditional therapy, you must go through therapy while you're doing that. But this is even more necessary because you just get to such deep things and the things people remember. I mean, there are times when you just can't fathom how another human being could do that to someone, and you hear it, but you have to be able to hold it and treat your own symptoms of shock. If I hear something that's terribly disturbing, I put on a heating pad so that I don't check out. I want to be there for my client. I want to stay in my body.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So then, just as we're speaking about the therapist's role, how would you describe their role in this? So you mentioned they need to be able to hold the space. Can you talk to us more about what that means and what does it really mean to guide the client through that whole process?
Well, it's much different from talk therapy. There's the clinical distance that one keeps in a talk session. There's also the idea of trying to help them with their thoughts and to keep talking to them in another way, of speaking and saying, well, this makes more sense for you, and making suggestions. Here, we're really just guiding them on a journey. We're taking them into a trance. We're resourcing them. That's another important part of the hypnotherapy session. We give them places that they can retreat to if things get to be too intense in the hypnotherapy session. We tell them, find a place that makes you feel completely safe and use all of your senses to be there. Find a wise adult inside you that you can count on to walk into that room where you were abused. Let that wise adult walk in with you and protect you as you go and re-experience this, and tell that person what that little person needed to say. So we go through a lot of that, but the therapist is a guide, a protective, supportive, loving guide. There's very little dialogue between the therapist and the client. The therapist merely takes them through the process and helps them find their own solutions. And, you stop them and say, so tell me what you made that mean about you. And if they say it means that nobody likes me, then you have to say, if nobody likes you, tell me what that means about you. I'm unlovable. So that's the belief that you had, that you were unlovable. And then, of course, just like in hypnosis, after the session, we like to give them either a recording of the part where they're receiving their affirmations and also the induction, or we want to give them everything written down so that they have their affirmations in a place where they can truly repeat them to themselves, write them down, make sure that they really come to own them. Yeah, the repetition is necessary there for that as well.
Absolutely.
But one hypnotherapy session, I treat a lot of addicts, not like as a coach, and also in hypnotherapy, I work with a lot of addicts. In addition to asking them to make sure that they're medically taken care of and that they're in a 12-step program of some kind, hypnotherapy gives addicts more than like, I'm not going to touch cocaine ever again, or I'm going to stop doing crystal meth. Okay. We go back and find out, what is it that you are trying to medicate with these substances? What is the problem? And when they get a chance to advocate for themselves in those traumatic situations, and they realize that they don't need to have the substance anymore, the addiction goes away almost by itself. You know, it's very powerful, very, very powerful. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's very, very powerful modality that, you know, an increasing number of people are coming to understand, hey, this really works. It's like,
That is awesome, because my next question was going to be, how do people perceive this? Is it something that people say, this is great, I want to try it? Do you get a lot of resistance when you bring it up as, you know, as a modality? You know, how do you address those concerns with clients, and what steps do you take to ensure that they feel safe and in control during the whole thing?
That's really important, especially for someone who has severe PTSD, but even in like a normal person, you know, who's kind of, you know, high functioning, and they come in, well, I really would like to explore. I have like some flash of memory in my childhood, but I'd like to know, you know, what's that, or what's underneath this thing that every time I get on an airplane and they shut the door, why do I have a panic attack? You know, it was a birth issue. The person was pushing through the birth canal and couldn't get out. And so they felt that closed in feeling, and they went into the same panic. So we cleared that. It's, you know, but well, it's not easy sometimes. You know, people will have a lot of objections. So we have usually, I'll hand them a sheet or tell them to check this or that website to see questions and answers about hypnotherapy, what it is, what it isn't, what's going to happen in the session. That way they feel open to ask me any kind of question that they might have. Okay. And the other thing that we have are little dips into the hypnotic trance and out, like, all right, let's like have you take a few deep breaths, and now see what happens if I just tell you to imagine that there's a balloon attached to your arm and it's coming up and up and up and up and up. And they can feel the power of the suggestion. They can see that they're still hearing my voice, that they're not falling asleep, that I'm not making them cluck like a chicken or doing anything else untoward to them. And that they, you know, that they see that, and it takes like 5 or 10 minutes. And then they come out of it and they're like, well, okay, maybe. And then we also have a titration process, because there is a thing known as emotional flooding. When you have someone who has severe PTSD and they're brought back to the situation that caused that, they can have emotional flooding, whereby they just go into shock and they can't process anything. So we take them very, very slowly. We maybe have them the first session, they come in and they just find their favorite place. And then they come out of the trance. Then we have them go to their favorite place and find their wise adult. And then they can go back out of the trance. And then on the third visit, maybe we say, let's install this little device where you can turn down those intense emotions, turn them up and down with your thoughts. We call it a dimmer switch, and put your, you know, your hands like this and bring them up or bring them down. And it gives them, you know, a tool that they can use. And we also always give every client the chance to say, this is too much for me, make it stop. And we set up a signal, we call it 1, 2, 3, stop. If it's too much, and so then we'll take them back to their safe place, let them be there for a little while and see if they want to continue or if they want to come out of the session. It's always up to the client. And so as a therapist, you have to be able to understand that you're following them. You're not leading them, you know, you're leading, you're guiding them. It's sort of like somebody who's blindfolded and you're just kind of like showing, you know, helping them to walk to where they want to go. So that you're helping them. Yeah. It's very cool. Yes. I was very fortunate when I joined the Wellness Institute. It was at a time when they also had a graduate school. So I received my Master's of Arts in transpersonal counseling from the Institute, and I took a really deep dive into the work with research and everything. So I was very fortunate.
Absolutely. Because that, like you mentioned, trying to bring someone or to understand where trauma even started, and it can be something that they don't even remember, that does have to be a slow, steady process to help make sure that they feel safe.
Mhm. Right. The safety is just so important.
Mm-hmm.
And even, people who have physical issues and they don't want to give up that shoulder pain. They have a secondary gain from that. Oh, if I have the shoulder pain, then I don't have to lift anything heavy, you know? And so
Yeah.
you have to work with those sorts of issues as well. But like I say, ideally, in whether you're in a psychotherapeutic situation or a coaching session, we also train nurses, acupuncturists, people who are in the medical profession, doctors.
Okay.
It's a combination using this and using the other modalities. It's really ideal to integrate.
Okay. Okay. That's really cool. So, as you're working with a client during a session, how do you encourage them to stay into the session? How do you not let your mind wander to other things? How do you teach them how to stay focused on just that one area?
Well, the part of the mind that wanders has been given permission to just take a rest. And
Okay.
that's, the part of the brain, the normal waking consciousness. Most of the time in a session, I'm talking not with the client who came into my office, I'm talking to that younger part of them.
Mm.
And they don't have a problem staying focused normally.
Okay.
And doing this work tends to bring people deeper into the trance. Okay, so where their subconscious gets permission to speak even more prominently than before. So I don't think I've ever had, and I've had people who had difficulty allowing themselves to be taken into the trance state that I have encountered. However, once people go into it and begin to do the work, they normally stay focused just as because they're there.
Okay.
And like I said, if they don't want to be there, they have that option. They know they can always say, stop,
Okay.
bring me back. I've also never had that happen, but I offer
Interesting.
people that option. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, that goes right back into that safety and a feeling of being in control of what is happening, for sure.
Yes. And people, especially in our culture, are so cerebrally oriented. This sounds a little bit anomalous, to many people. And, woo-woo or whatever, but it is a very highly effective way of using a state of mind that is really a human birthright, to be able to access our subconscious, because that's where everything lives. It's a very, much of the work that David and Diane do still is based in Jungian psychology and, the whole idea of the collective and synchronicity and all that wonderful stuff, which of course I just lapped up because of my background. Perfect
Absolutely.
match.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what types of practical tools or techniques do you use to help clients stay connected to those emotions or to their emotions during a session? How do you encourage them to really physically express them and to release those emotions?
My posture on this is that it is necessary to release those emotions. And so, you're here, let's not waste time. So that's where I'm coming from. But what I will do with them first is I will demonstrate. Okay, I have a rubber hose and a punching bag, and I'll show them, like, I'm really mad. How could you do this to me? And I'll scream and I'll yell, and they'll kind of go, but that gives them permission to do the same thing,
Yeah.
It isn't like you don't have to do that, but if you need to do that, go ahead. For people who don't want to be verbal, I have a set of Nerf balls and a box, and I let them throw them. I have a drum they can pound on to let their emotions out. And, people will often try to narrate, well, I was 4 years old and I was this and I said, no, I am. Tell me, speak as that little boy or little girl and tell your parent exactly what you wanted and needed to say, and sometimes they'll just cry. That can be very new to some people. People are cut off from their emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And so this brings them back in touch. And another really good technique is to say, tell me where you feel that in your body. And as I said earlier, give that a voice.
Yeah.
Sometimes, for instance, I did a demonstration session once where the person her feet were moving like this. And I said, so tell me what your feet need to say. I want to run. I want to get away. Well, it turned out that she was sort of naturally regressing back to a time when she was raped.
Mm.
And it was
Wow.
her feet were giving her the message.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, it's necessary for hypnotherapists to do their work so that they can hold something, that's profound and deep and difficult. And it's true for all therapists, but talking about it is different from watching the person re-experience it, and being there for them and holding the space means, like what I was saying, giving them permission to express their emotions, just being there and letting them do whatever they need to do, and just holding that space and keeping them safe. That's what holding the space means.
Gotcha.
Giving them permission to speak what they're being told from their subconscious.
Gotcha. So is hypnotherapy for everyone? You mentioned it could work a lot with clients who have experienced trauma, have some level of PTSD, but is hypnotherapy for everyone? Is there a certain set of clients that it works best for?
Well, I would say that, any kind of trauma or addiction habits, behavioral changes that a person would like to make, it's ideal for that. It is not ideal for someone who is suffering with psychosis, because anytime the voices are coming from outside, it's not a good thing, because it's just too much for them to handle, and it's just not going to be therapeutic for them to use it. Like if someone came and told me, well, I have a pacemaker, I would ask for their doctor to sign off on it first, because it may not be the best thing for them to get agitated. And then also, with what I said about something like schizophrenia, that's not the case with something like dissociative identity disorder. We find that quite commonly in trauma clients. People who they will dissociate, and there'll be multiple personalities. There's a way of working with these clients using hypnotherapy that's highly effective, and that we go back the time when each of the personalities decided that they needed to emerge.
Wow.
Because they're almost always, it's like, some child is like being completely abused, weekly or monthly. Each time it happens, the protector personality emerges, or the bad boy or bad girl emerges, and so they have all these personalities. So we let them tell us when they emerged what the trauma was. We heal. It takes years to do this, of course, but we have them heal that trauma, and then we get them to work together.
Okay.
So we teach that in our 6-day training. And always, if you're not capable of doing something like that, you need to consult with someone who is. But oftentimes, as a hypnotherapist, I might work with someone who's a therapist, and they say, could you do a hypnotherapy session with my client? Sure. And if with the client's permission, a therapist can come in. In a situation like that, I would insist on that, that like if you're treating someone with dissociative identity disorder, you come in with them, and I'll do the hypnotherapy part of it. And, then they can come back to you and continue with the rest of the treatment. But there is a lot of room for that, for people who do hypnotherapy to consult with therapists in that way.
Okay. And kind of along those same lines, then how do you know when a client is ready to do hypnotherapy or to enter into hypnosis? How do you gauge when the right time is now, or maybe you should wait? Especially just like you mentioned, working with clients who have experienced deep trauma or have, some level of psychosis there. How do you know when it's time?
When I feel as though that they can trust me, so there's no time on that, no time limit on that. When we've built up that trust and consistency, where they know that I'm going to be here for them. And there's so much that goes into that, even down to like ending your session on time. That's important. Even if they're 20 minutes late, you have to end the session on time. So they know that's their time. And the next section is for the next person. And,
Right.
you know, it's keeping boundaries, all of these things that therapists are not always so good at. Keeping boundaries, asking for payment, all of these things. They're not always so great at it.
Yeah.
And so that's why the training that wellness provides, wherein the therapist is being also going through their own process and their own transformative growth, very helpful.
Yeah.
Because in our advanced trainings, there are mastermind groups and processes that really dig deep down in, and yeah, people really come out. I mean, I know I've gone through the whole program and I'm not even anywhere near the person I was when I came in.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool to hear.
Yeah. It's at any age, you can continue to grow. I hope I never stop.
Absolutely. So then how do you measure success? What does a successful session look like? And then what types of changes do you typically see in your clients over time? Like, how do you know it works?
Well, it's the amount of insight that the client gains into their own behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So someone I have had clients who procrastinate, and then they go into a regression and they find out that their parents tied them down, tied them to a bed, or tied them to a post in the backyard. So they felt like they were tied down. And so guess what? Moving forward is very scary because it's going to hurt. And so when they come in and they make the connection between their current behavior and the root of that current behavior, then they can change the current behavior by saying that isn't happening now in the moment. I've overcome that. I've been able to speak my truth to the people who did that to me. It was wrong. I didn't deserve it. I'm a good person, we change the way that they think about themselves. And you notice the progress the same way that you do in any other kind of counseling situation, where you see them, constantly improve and be able to finish tasks that they promised themselves that they're going to accomplish and things of that nature. And you see them, this gives them that ability, that insight that can take years and years and years in talk therapy to figure that out, because number one, they might not even remember it consciously. And number two, if they do, they're ashamed. And you can always see someone who's ashamed. They're looking down and, they don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. Well, in hypnotherapy also, I should add, no one will ever go back to an event or a situation that they're not ready to handle. So, if someone had severe abuse at the age of 2, even something like satanic ritual abuse, which I've seen in the world, I have seen it. And they're not ready to quite go back to it yet. They won't. But then after a few sessions, when they become ready to deal with it, then they'll go back there and deal with that. There are other things that they'll go to. Sometimes people will go back to the age of 4 and then go forward to the age of 18 because they don't want to go back to the age of 2.
Wow. Okay. See, in my head, I was thinking that it was like a linear thing, like you go way back to whatever started issues and then you work your way up. But so that's interesting that it's not necessarily, it goes to where your mind is ready to go.
It goes to where, less your mind and more your subconscious, your psyche, your soul, if you will, or your heart.
Got you.
Mm-hmm. That's why heart-centered is a very wonderful, loving, supportive system. And that's the whole idea, is to give the person the awareness of the unconditional love that's really right there within them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us some of your most transformative experience you've witnessed in your clients as a result of this therapy?
A couple of them come to mind. One of them was really astounding. It was an older woman, and she had chronic hip pain. Doctors couldn't figure out what it was from. They checked her out. They checked her bones. They checked her tendons. They checked her ligaments. They checked her for arthritis. And it's like, seriously, there's just nothing wrong with that hip. So we did a regression. She was a wellness person. So she, kind of she knew, what was going to happen. So she was probably a little bit less hesitant than most other clients might have been. First regression, she goes back to being a small baby in a high chair where they used to tie you like with a vinyl strap around you, and what literally was just a high chair, and the chair tipped over. No one was in the room, and she couldn't move, and she kept trying to crawl, and she couldn't. And her hip started to hurt while she was talking about it. This was the message from her hip. So we worked that out. My needs don't matter was her whole conclusion, because when she called, nobody came to her. So as a result, she remained immobilized. Then she went back again, and this time she went to a past life. And she described being married to a man, being very happy, and they were expecting a baby, and they had him named and everything. But she lost the baby a few months before she was supposed to deliver him, and he passed away, and she still was mourning him and grieving him. And the pain in her hip is in the same area where she was holding that grief, right there where her uterus is, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And so we worked through that. We had her talk to the baby and give the baby to whoever she wanted to give him to. She decided to give him to her dad in this life because he knows how to fix things, and she'll show her son how to do that. And then we allowed her to just bring beautiful energy all through her body and cleanse out any pain, any grief. Just like let it all cleanse out. And we came out of the trance. We did all the healing and everything. She came out, the healing session is the conversation with the child, and she talked to the child in the high chair. And she talked also to the woman who had the baby. And then when she came in, I had to have her use my reclining chair rather than go on a mat on the floor. She couldn't do that. She got up out of the chair and walked around the room without pain.
Wow. Wow.
So, I'm not saying, we're one of these kinds of healers, but the body holds these terrible memories. And so, so that's just one of them. And then, in a social way, the thing that I was describing about a person who had an issue about procrastination in two cases. In one case, it was because the person had been literally tied to a bed by the parents. And so when he was able to work that out, then he was able to move forward and be more effective in his life. It was really huge. And then in the other case was the woman I described, who had, and that was what she came in on, was procrastination.
Oh.
And she was held down because of the situation. And then also there was some physical abuse, and she went through all of that. Now, can this always happen in one session? No, it doesn't. They need to work on the issues, but it's the idea of being able. Hypnotherapy gives a person the ability to identify that issue. It's like, I don't know why I procrastinate becomes like, oh, I procrastinate because of that. Well, that's not happening anymore. So then I finish what I start.
Yeah.
I got to follow through. Yeah. Yeah. So it's just some of them. There are many. You see them even like people do their first sessions in the 6-day training, and you're like, wow, I never knew that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, because we don't give our subconscious permission to talk to us except when we're dreaming.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Then we think, oh, it's just a dream. It might be, but this is a deliberate inquiry of the subconscious. Why do I feel this emotion? Where does this come from?
Very nice. Very nice. Thank you for that. So as we begin to close, and honestly, I have so many more questions that I don't want to hold you much longer. So for those that are interested in exploring heart-centered hypnotherapy or learning more about your work, where can they find more information and stay connected with you?
Well, wellnessinstitute.org will take you to the Wellness Institute. We have a 6-day hypnotherapy training. I also teach a 2-day hypnosis course, which is for people who just want to learn the hypnosis portion. And it's just 2 days over the course of a weekend, very, very reasonably priced. And you can get a taste of it. And then if you decide to take the 6th day after that, you can get a substantial discount on that. And the Wellness Institute does all of its classes online with live teachers. Okay, we're really there on Zoom with you. It isn't, just like you're watching a TV show. We're really there with you, and you have a peer group. And we very definitely believe in the power of the group. And a person being witnessed and witnessing others accelerates the healing even more. So that's very, very powerful, and learning as well. And, you can just look me up on the internet and you'll probably find me.
I will definitely do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Judi, I really appreciate you speaking with us today. This has really been interesting and kind of eye-opening to a new topic for me. So thank you very much for coming.
You're very welcome, and thank you for having me. And it's always my great joy to give to others what's been given to me. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks. And thank you to our listeners for taking the time to join us. Before you go, we'd love your help. Please leave a review and share the podcast with a friend. By spreading the word, you help us grow and reach more people, allowing others to discover the valuable insights shared in each episode. Thank you for being such an important part of the Behavioral Health Today community. As always, the resources for this episode and an archive of all of our other episodes can be found on our webpage at triadhq.com/BHT. And we look forward to having you back with us next time on Behavioral Health Today.
We appreciate all the support from our community, and if you like our show, one of the best ways you can support it is by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review. Behavioral Health Today is a podcast part of the Triad Behavioral Health Network, all rights reserved.